I'm Ben Ayers, coming to you from inside our cold tent at Everest Base Camp. Here's your daily dispatch. Today is April 30th. The folks at Seven Summits and Arnold Koster Adventures have hooked us up with a great production tent this year. And of course, as you know, we've been working with Kailash Outdoor for our equipment. And honestly, in this cold weather, I couldn't be more grateful. So for those of you who are listening live right now, thank you so much for being a part of our Basecamp VIP team. We really, really appreciate the support. And for other people, if you want to see these dispatches live every day, there's an option to sign up on YouTube. I'll spare the whole thing that it's like cheaper than a cup of cappuccino at Basecamp, because it isn't, because the cappuccinos are free at Basecamp. However, probably where you're living, it might be cheaper than that. And that actually helps us cover our costs and bring these stories to you. We really appreciate it. And today is what I hope will be the last sort of long dispatch about the Kumbu Icefall. I'm sure we're all getting tired of hearing about it and talking about it. But there was a moment last night that really struck me in a way that I don't know. It was something that really stayed with me, and I wanted to talk about it today. So to add a little bit of context for it, the Icefall is totally open. People are using the route that's been fixed this year, which includes going underneath the Serac. It also does include that 4-ladder sort of aluminum ladder slackline bridge thing. There's some videos coming in today of people falling off it, which was kind of grim, but everyone's safe. It's just how it goes. And that's what it takes right now to get up to Camp 1 and Camp 2. Despite these challenges, we are seeing over 100 high altitude workers heading up the mountain last night, and probably even greater numbers tonight. I'm thinking, from what I've heard, the first sort of commercial clients, are going to be heading up tomorrow night. So it's in full swing. It's happening. Everest is underway, and I think that's great news. There were some questions in the comments yesterday about when I was talking about Anya, who is climbing kind of independently on the mountain, and there's a question about, like, how do people climb independently on Everest when there's a law that says you have to climb with a guide? There are definitely ways that people work around this. A lot of independent climbers are people who are trying to climb without oxygen. They're people that are looking for kind of a more pure experience. And oftentimes they'll do their rotation solo. So they go up to Camp 1, bringing their own tent. They're doing this for their own training and just for simplicity's sake. But then when they do go up to the summit, they will bring a Sherpa or high altitude guide with them just for safety, but still continue to set up their own camps and all that stuff along the way. So that's kind of how that system works. And this year, there's quite a few people who are opting for that route on the mountain. I also spent a bunch of time today just talking to different people about the condition of the Icefall. I know it's something, that we're all kind of worried about. I think from a logical perspective, we've gone through this thing this spring where the Icefall was such a dramatic, the Serac was such a dramatic, like, terrifying, most dangerous thing in history. And now all of a sudden everyone's just walking under it. How do we square that circle? It's something I'm still trying to do. I was able to have some informal conversations with my friends over at the Icefall Doctors today, just trying to see like what gives, like what's going through your mind. And basically what I took away from on that was that they made a sober assessment that this option is the least dangerous option for right now. And I think, there's a lot of, it's easy to say, well, why don't you just cancel the season, right? But I think that that's much more difficult in practice, not just for commercial reasons. I think it's more difficult because Everest climbers, by and large, are here knowing that they are coming to assume a certain level of risk, and the climbers are trained to assume risk and try to minimize that risk as much as they can. So in the case of where the Serac is, the climbers are preparing themselves to spend as little time in that section as possible. For the Icefall Doctors, they're pretty convinced that the Serac is going to come down at some point in the next week or 10 days. They understand how the icefall works. And what they've said to me today is that, the one thing with the icefall doctors, forgive me, one thing with the icefall doctors is that these are not technicians in the sense that we see it in the Western world. These are people that have an extremely spiritual and intimate relationship with the mountain that's very, very difficult to explain briefly. But they take the relationship with Miolungsama, which is the goddess that lives on Mount Everest, and the relationship with the place extremely, extremely seriously. And it's a very deep thing with them. They communicate with the icefall. It speaks to them. They understand when it's going to work and when it isn't. In certain dangerous sections, they will do a certain ritual and leave prayers and leave objects, sacred objects, asking for that section to fall when no one's there. They have done that process with the Serac. For a lot of us sort of rational-minded, for more scientific-minded people, this seems incredibly risky. But in their worldview and in their mindset, they're doing everything they can to make that route as safe as possible. And I was really kind of taken aback by the thoughtfulness that they put into setting the route this season, despite the pressure. So while I can't completely explain why there's more risk in the route this year, or how to justify that, those are not decisions I've made. I am trying to clarify to you some of the rationale that was happening behind the scenes. And so the moment that I wanted to talk about to kind of wrap things up here was last night after dinner. The sun had gone down. It was maybe 9:30 p.m. And we sat outside our tent, and you could just see this long string of headlamps moving up into the icefall. And this was just after we had all been kind of talking about the Serac and worrying about the Serac and worrying about everybody. And it left me with a sense of kind of foreboding, right? A sense of fear. And I don't know if that's justified, right? It's not my decision to make. But one of our climbing Sherpas and leaders with the expedition here was with me, and we were just kind of watching these headlamps move by, and we were talking it over. And I said to him, I'm like, how does this make you feel? Watching all these people go into this dangerous situation again. What's on your mind right now? And he just looked at me and he said, it's war. It's like we're going to war. And that really struck me. And it struck me not just because of the violence of that metaphor or the obvious risk of death involved. What it struck me as is these hundreds of young men that are working in the icefall. They're doing it because that is the option they have to feed their families. It's a very simple truth here. It's good money for people who live in rural Nepal. And if this option wasn't available to them, it's very possible that these people would be working as mercenaries in other countries. It's a very common thing in Nepal. There are Nepalis fighting on the Russian side in the Ukraine war. There are Nepalis working as mercenaries all over the world, and it's a tradition that goes back hundreds of years. And that just struck me about maybe some of the realities of growing up in Nepal. Some of the realities that make the Sherpas as strong as they are, and some of the realities that make Everest climbing what it is. It's not always safe. It's not always pretty. It's not always a guarantee. But at the end of the day, it's very real. And at the end of the day, like, veterans and servicemen and women everywhere, I do see them as heroes personally. And I have a lot of admiration for what they're doing on the mountain this year. And they're an awful lot of fun to be around. So didn't want to leave it on a super heavy note. We've been trying to figure out where the duck is, but we haven't heard yet, but we'll let you know. And thanks for listening to my rant today. Tomorrow we're going to mix it up a little bit. I think it'll be a little more interesting, a lot more fun. But thanks a lot, and that's your Daily Dispatch for today, April 30th. Any questions?
Only about the irony of having free cappuccinos on Everest.
The irony? I mean, it's delicious. I don't know if it's ironic. I mean, so here's the thing too. Okay, I'm gonna riff on that. It's one of the things where I remember before I came up here, seeing all the images of Everest Base Camp and being like, "That's off the hook. Like that is crazy. It's totally unnecessary. Why do you need that in the mountains?" You know, I sort of had this idea, I think, in my head that everyone should climb in the way that like Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay climbed. And then, you know, as I started to read and research and understand more, like Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay had like typewriters and they had like a whole lot of brandy and like all sorts of canned fish. I mean, those guys were also probably eating pretty well. I'm sure they had coffee. But then also coming up here and living here, it's still just because there's free cappuccino doesn't make it easy necessarily to be here. It's cold. It's constantly cold. Living at 17,500 feet, 5,300 meters is kind of a drag. So I get it. I get the shade away. But I can tell you, living here, it feels a little different, and it's nice to have a warm cappuccino sometimes.
And there was just a comment on the thanks that being able to watch this from home.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we appreciate everybody watching this from wherever you are. I do hope one of the things that's really actually like lifted my heart this year is there's been a ton of comments about like people wanting to do the Everest Base Camp trek and like asking advice in the comments. And so I hope people who are watching this like feel free to like throw that in there. I would love to be a resource to share like what I feel like I'm doing at Everest Live is sharing just the incredible learning and wonder and curiosity and like craziness of this place that's changed my life. And I just hope other people can have a similar experience, even if it's just coming here for a trek. So I appreciate y'all being at home. If any of y'all have that little itch of wanting to come here, throw us a comment. We're really happy to try to give advice or just try to inspire any kind of that dreams coming true kind of thing. You know, life's short, and I hope we can all sort of share that in our community. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day wherever you're at. And tomorrow we're going to have a secret special guest. It's going to be super fun. Talk to you then. Thank you.